Hi, this is Dr. Kat, and this is Chat with Dr. Kat. I am a psychologist, an author, and one of the founders of online therapy telehealth. For over 20 years, I've helped people uncover the patterns that hold them back and help them find those truths that help to set them free. So, this is a podcast that we're going to be talking about relationships, thoughts, feelings with each other, with our families, with friends, the world, all of that. One of the things that I want you to think about is that when you're listening to this, start forming some of those questions in your mind about what you want to talk about. Right now on my website, you can go to the website and start putting in questions. So what we've done is we've kind of gone through and received quite a few questions from people, and I've uncovered a theme that usually happens during summertime, and that's when the kids are home and the emotions that happen around kids, having kids. Why do I have so many emotions around kids? So we're going to talk about it. No fluff, no judgment, just real talk that leads to real change. Okay, so what are we going to talk about? Why do people have so many emotions around having kids? Why this wasn't like that before? How did it affect my job, my career, how I relate to other people since I've had kids? Because that does change. It completely changes. And oftentimes we don't realize how much it changes us. So let me give you an example. I remember before having kids, I was watching a movie with my parents, and I was working on lock psych units, pretty intense. And we were watching the movie Girls Interrupted. Angelina Jolie, I think Whoopi Goldberg's in it. Anyway, and it was about young girls on a lock psych unit. And I remember one time I turned around during the movie and I see both my parents crying. And I'm like, why are you crying? And they said, well, this is so emotional. And it wasn't that I was detached, but it tapped into my brain that I was working. So as I'm watching it, I'm trying to figure out storyline, what's going on, how I could help this person. It just kind of, effects of doing what I do. So I looked at that and I thought, okay, I've got to make sure that I keep myself in check, that I don't become desensitized. It's all these things that we do as therapists, trying to keep our emotions in check while keeping us safe from all the issues we hear. So we develop a compartmentalized brain. Anyway, moving forward, I now have my first child. Well, I'm in a session with a woman that I hadn't seen for quite some time, and she was talking about her kids. And I knew that one of them had been sick. So, of course, I asked about that child. And she broke down and she says, we lost her and that she had died. She started sobbing, uncontrollably sobbing. And I sat there and I sobbed with her. Now, I'm not saying that it wouldn't have happened like that before, but not to that level. And it's because having children tapped into a different emotional part of my brain. So let's talk about that today. Let's talk about what happens. So here's my theory, okay? I think it's a pretty good theory. And this is how it goes. Before you're in your 20s, maybe you don't have your kids yet. So you're kind of in that selfish phase where everything is about, work, career, going to college, your friends, and you're in a selfish state. You want to take a trip, you want to go off for a weekend, stay out all night and still get to work. These are things that you do when you don't have kids. So then you have your first child, and those emotional floodgates open up. And the way I usually show people, I have almost like my fingers are kind of twisted together and I'm holding them at my heart. And now you see these gates that were once kind of closed off from the world, keeping yourself safe from other people, now open up and you love seriously like you have never loved before. Never. So now everything becomes hyper emotional. You're aware of anything and everything that could be harmful to your child, and you want to be cautious and careful. When they start toddling, you're making sure that the corners have a soft cushion on it because you don't want them to bump their head. Well, obviously allowing them a bit of independence, but this is what we do, right? Then they get to school. They start going to school, and now your kid is exposed to other kids, and you're exposed to other parents. That's when the emotional floodgates really show you what's going on, and why so many people, with the questions that people posted on the website, was, how do I deal with other parents? What do I do when my kid goes to school? Why am I so emotionally charged? And then other questions that were actually from teenage parents saying, I feel like I'm protecting my heart from what they're doing, but it's cutting me off. So again, here goes those floodgates. Here's the theory. So you have the baby, those floodgates open up, and you feel like never before. They go to school. Now you're in protective mode. You're dealing with parents that, let's face it, have their own issues, okay? And a lot of times those things play out on the blacktop, okay? If you're a parent volunteer, which I was, a lot of stuff gets played out there. And a lot of that's because people are in this hyper emotional state. And then as you see things go along, their kids are now in high school, there's less volunteer opportunities, and a lot of it is because your kids don't want you at the school, right? So now they're already tugging at that heartstring. They want to be with their friends. They want to not have as much family time because what's important to them are those relationships. So maybe there's more fights. Maybe there's arguments. I like to refer to it as the twilight zone. You get into that place where, the reasoning skills of your teenager doesn't make sense to you. You're trying to come at them with logic and it doesn't work. And they come at you. And what I hear from people all the time is, I'm injured by my kids. I'm hurt by what they say. So what starts to happen? We start to close those floodgates. They start to close off, which becomes perfect timing for when they go off to college. We're not as open. We're not as raw with our emotions. Sometimes because they've had some difficult adolescent years, it's time for them to go off to college and maybe have some distance. Other times you are experiencing what's going on. But this is something I say to all parents when they're struggling with kids that go off to college. We've raised these people who we feel we cannot live without. I mean, these are our children, to live without us. Again, we raise them to live without us, but we can't live without them. So it becomes this dichotomy of, I have these emotions. I've raised them to be independent. I want them to be independent. I want them to be successful. I want them to experience life. I want them to make great calculated choices that have calculated risk. Get out there, experience life. Yet, please don't leave me. I'm not ready. Right? So it becomes very, very difficult. So the emotional gates aren't as big as it was. That's why we don't send our small children off to leave us for years at a time. I mean, sometimes you do find certain situations where there's boarding schools and things like that, but not on the norm. So when they get ready for college and they're ready to go, it becomes difficult. And this is what I recommend. Having a conversation with your child that is simply put like this. I know you feel I don't understand what's going on with you right now, but I want you to just sit back for a minute. And I want you to realize that I have been where you are. I have left home. I have gone to college. I've experienced life that way. I know what it is like to want to be with my friends, make them the priority, become independent, live in a dorm, and then live in an apartment. I've done that. But you have not done what I'm doing right now. and that is raise this beautiful baby to then leave. You haven't done that. So you don't know that level of emotion. So it's really you that doesn't understand. And that's okay. That's okay. You don't have to right now. But what I want you to do is have some patience with me. Tell your kid, please have patience with me. It will take time for me to figure out. I remember when my daughter went to college, she was telling me she went grocery shopping, and she says to me, oh, I bought this. And oh, did you buy organic? That was my response. Did you buy organic? Did you get this? Did you rent it? And she had to say to me, I know what to do. You've shown me what to do. I know how to purchase things. I have different apps that show me what are the best products to use. I know what to do. So what happens there? You need to trust that what you have taught your kids, they've got it. And if you see that they don't, step back in a little bit, say a couple things. But all in all, I'm here to tell you, you are always going to have emotions around your kids. It's just the nature of a human being. You're going to have those emotions. Now, what you need to learn how to do is develop coping skills that can help you face those things. When you first have a baby, and you have all these emotions, reminding yourself that other people have babies as well, that some of them are in the same boat as you, other people are not, being a little bit more empathic. Here's another thing I want you to think about. You will develop a discipline style, a healthy discipline style. Okay, the word perfect, again, does not come into play. There is no perfect parenting style and no perfect parent. So you will make mistakes. That will happen. Some that you may regret or think about or play over in your mind. Try to let those things go, because you need to be focusing on your next opportunity with them, your next parenting opportunity. If you're stuck dwelling on some of the things you've done in the past, then you're going to lose that opportunity. And now you'll have 2 regrets. Don't do that. Don't do that. Move on. Move on. That's what you need to do. Learn from your mistakes and move on. This is what we're going to be teaching our kids, right? Sometimes the best lesson is not in your success, in the immediate success, but it's in how you rise after you fall. Same thing with parenting, okay? Here's the second part. Don't apologize for your parenting. Sometimes your worst enemy is another parent who's way too lenient. Let me say that again. Your worst enemy is another parent who is way too lenient. Are they really an enemy? No. But that's when your kid says, well, so-and-so gets to do this. So-and-so gets to watch that. So-and-so got a phone at 8 years old. These, people are going to have different styles. Stick with your style. If it's something that works for your family, stick with it. You want to make sure that you are raising individuals who are going to be wonderful people. We want our kids to be successful and to be able to be prosperous, to maybe create another family of their own. But all in all, we want to raise kind people. So you need to show them that part. Okay, so let's go back to the different stages a little bit more with disciplinary style. So when we look at things in the beginning, we need to look at things and say to ourselves, okay, what is it that we want to do? Some people will say things like, should I let my kid have, screen time? Should I allow my child to have certain foods? You've got to figure out what's best for your family. I will say that with whatever style you choose, there will be consequences. They'll either be positive or negative or both. And what I would recommend is you navigate and choose things that have the least amount of consequences that are negative. So I'm not a big supporter of screen time for babies and toddlers. But that's one thing you're going to already start feeling. Maybe people will give you a look in when you're, in a restaurant and you've handed your kid a, phone to watch. Defensive feelings because someone's looking at you. Okay, maybe step back and look. Am I making the best choice at this point? Now, I recommend bringing in great toys, things to color, engage with your child. Because what you're doing is maybe you're not showing your child how to sit in a restaurant. We have to teach them that, how to sit in a restaurant, how to sit, if you like the theater, if you like to take them places where they learn how to behave. It's not going to be easy. Sometimes kids don't want to sit, but you take it step by step. So these are the first things that you deal with. So when you get those looks from other people, okay, that's that first moment. That's a floodgate right there where you become extra defensive or emotional. Look, if you're doing the best that you can, do the best that you can. If you can do better, do better. Now, here's one thing. I jumped ahead a little bit. I want to go back. When we have our babies, I remember, I went to Gymboree with my daughter, and, she was so little. Gymboree was more about, for me, in the beginning, and connecting with other moms and dads there. And I remember we had this wonderful guy who was running the group. And one of the days he says, you know what, let's all talk about, your birthing experience and how that affected you. And then we, would stop and sing with the babies and have them move their arms and legs. Precious. But again, a lot of it was about us. So we asked, and I remember we went around and I got to my story. And I said that, how long I had been in labor for before having a C-section. And this woman leans over to me and she says, oh my God, were you okay that your body failed you? And I looked at her and I said, whoa, my body didn't fail me. The goal was get baby out. I got baby out. And I looked at her and I said, do you feel like your body failed you? She says, I do. And I said, you got to let go of that. You can't carry that with you. But oftentimes, all of that starts even from birth, even from the birthing experience. This is what I tell absolutely every person I work with. You can have birthing plan A, B, and C. I advise it. I recommend it. Put out what you want to have happen. Tell your partner this is what you want to have happen. But if it doesn't work out, have plan B. If that doesn't work out, have plan C with the ultimate goal, get baby out. Whether it's, people say natural or C-section, I keep it real, vaginal or C-section. Everything's natural. You're having a baby. Let's not attach a negative thing that's already emotionally going to start affecting us. You will be crying. That's your body ridding itself of all the extra hormones, all of that. So, have a baby. Get baby out. Next step, keep baby alive. That is your goal. So, when people say, oh my gosh, I'm 1 month late. I still am giving my baby a bottle and I haven't transitioned to a sippy cup. Okay, your child's not going to be walking down the aisle getting married with the sippy cup or going to college with the sippy cup. If you're 1 month, 6 months off, whatever it is, take a step back. See what's going on with you. What is happening? Is it more convenient for you at the time? Do you need to now start transitioning into it? That's okay. See, we stop moving forward when we spend so much time criticizing ourselves and criticizing our choices and not being able to move on. We need to be able to move forward, learn from what we have done, and do our best to not repeat it. And keep going. And this is what you want to show your children, to show them, as they start getting older, that maybe sometimes they do have some behavioral patterns that you want them to look into. You don't want them to keep repeating. Now, you're going to have some kids with behavioral patterns because that's just the way it is. Now you're going to have different things like ADD comes into play, which we'll do another podcast, probably several on ADD, autism, all those different things that come into play, dyslexia, all those things that come in that can, affect our kids and ultimately affect you guys as well, the parents, the family. So all those things happen. And again, our floodgates are open. You are correct. You are experiencing heightened levels of emotions. But how wonderful. You have these beautiful children that you have created and that you are helping form into wonderful human beings. It's emotional. Embrace it. Embrace the love. I saw this movie with Jennifer Lopez and, I don't know, some other actor. I forget his name now. And he goes to the park after finding out that she's having twins. I won't go into too far of a backstory. But anyway, he freaks out. He goes into the park. He meets up with this other dad. There's some comedic stuff. And he says to the other guy, "Is it great?" He goes, "Well," and they're sitting there drinking juice boxes. And he goes, let me tell you about parenting. He goes, "It's awful, awful, awful." And then something wonderful happens that is so wonderful and a feeling you have never experienced before. And then awful, awful. And again, it goes into these patterns. Because why? Nothing is perfect. Nothing is perfect. Parenting isn't perfect. You don't have a perfect child. You're going to have one child that, you're still waiting to have the terrible twos and they're in college. They've been, a child that hasn't had a lot of emotional issues. And then you have another child that will have emotional issues. They're two different people. So oftentimes your approach is going to be different. And you've got to be careful with that as well, because that can bring on a lot of emotional feelings. At the end of the day, you've got to stop blaming yourself. You've got to start looking at what you have done. One of the things I remember again from Gymboree, and I was with a group of moms, and we all had our little, baby strollers and buggies, and we had all of them, and we would go to Gymboree, and we would be in Calabasas, and we'd go over to this area where you could, have food, and I remember this one woman walking towards us. She was dressed in red head to toe. She had red flowing hair, and she just looked like she stepped out of a magazine. Just beautiful, beautiful. And as she walked by, I said, "Excuse me." And she goes, "Yes." And I said, "You look stunning. You're just beautiful, radiant in this outfit." She goes, "Oh my gosh, are you sure? I didn't think, I kind of second guessed my shoes and then I wasn't sure." And I said, "Think no more. You're stunning." And she goes, "Oh my gosh, thank you. You made my day." She walks away. I remember another parent looked at me and she goes, "Oh, how do you know her?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know her." And she says, "You just complimented her?" And I said, "Yes, she was beautiful. I wanted to compliment her." And at that moment, I realized this was one thing I wanted to instill in my children, to pay people compliments. When you see people look beautiful or there's something you like about them, there's always something you're going to see in another human being that is wonderful. It could be hair, the way they speak, what they're wearing, they're funny, whatever it is. To find something, pay people compliments. Compliments can help change the world. We're in a time right now where people need to feel good. And if you can start with your children, teaching them how to be kind, how to be wonderful to other people, wow, you're going to be ahead of the game. Show people kindness. And I see that with my children. I see them paying people compliments, people that they don't know, and seeing how good they feel when they do it and how great that other person feels. And hopefully that person will then pass it on to that person and the next person and the next person. It has to be about kindness. Okay, but here's the reality. And I'm going to wrap up because we're at the end. No one's perfect, okay? No one's perfect. We're going to learn things through this podcast. That one of the biggest things you're going to learn is you're not alone, okay? The slew of questions we got just on this topic alone, you're not alone, okay? We all feel this way. Some more than others. Some need to feel more than others, and we can get into that as well. But you need to stop blaming yourself. You need to learn from your mistakes. Celebrate the joys and the things that you do. When you hear your child compliment another person, oh my God, soak it in. When you see your child set a boundary with a friend, even when they're little, that it's their toy and that they want to finish playing with it before they share, because that's a whole other topic. Why do we teach our kids you always have to share, share, share? Sharing is great, but also setting a boundary and you enjoying something because you've earned it, that's okay too. That's okay too. So we're going to learn about a lot of these different things. And hopefully this podcast is going to take us to whole new different levels. Just a reminder, this is not just about parenting. Today was about parenting. Today is about those emotions, but we're going to talk about everything. Relationships with our partners, relationships with friends, siblings, our parents, and the world. What goes on with the world and why we become so ignited by things. So, give yourself the gift of time. Sit down, reflect, embrace things that I've said to you today, and most importantly, maybe write down a list of things that you've done as a parent that you're proud of, and sit with it for a moment. Give yourself that gift of time. Then sit down with some things you want to change. Be happy that you want to make a change. Quit complaining about it. Sit down, be happy that you're making a list about change. So, I would like to encourage you to send in questions. Share this with a friend who need to hear it. And let me tell you, everybody needs to hear it. We all need to hear it. We all need to talk about it. And in the future, I want you to know this podcast is going to include other people that come in, share their thoughts and opinions. We're going to get a bantering back and forth that's going to be from other professionals as well as people, just people. So send in those questions. Eventually, we're going to have access for you to go to mytherapymatch.com where you can find someone to talk to. This is Chat with Dr. Kat. The website, chatwithdrkat.com. Don't forget, go put in your questions. I've really enjoyed this. I've enjoyed our time. Thank you for listening. And again, no fluff, no judgment, just real talk that leads to real change.